Okay, I don't know how this shows up on your screen. Hopefully it'll show up pretty well, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit on parts of this, although it'll flip on me like that. But so here we have the 12 tribes and portions of Canaan. And it goes all the way down here from the river of Egypt that runs out the bottom of the giant lake here, which we know as Galilee, but is really all the way up until after 300 AD, known as Lake Tiberias. And this is the Tiber River and not the Jordan River. Yeah. So things are named different in this map, but here they have it all broke up, and it's real strange how they give Simon such a big spot and Caleb not in there, and Judah gets this spot here, and it's kind of important. I'll go back to that. Reuben, Gad here, Ephraim, Dan, Benjamin, all three of those together don't add up to Gad's. Manasseh gets a huge piece here too, which acre-wise would be the same. Then he's got another one over here, Manasseh too. And then Isaac, Zebulun, Asher over here, and Naphtali. Well, Asher, Aya, Asher, Aya, right? I am Asher, Aya. And Asher means happiness. And they named this land Happiness whenever they got to steal the port from the king of Tyre. But Asher and Ashurbanipal, which is where you get the name from, is way the hell over here. I mean, in this, it'd be way over there. And because, the Euphrates and stuff is over there, and Akkad is a little higher up and right over here. And so, let's look at some of these names here, because they're pretty telling. Names are named after people, places, and things they do there, stuff like that. So let's go through this real quick, and I can show you how kind of over time things have overlapped and overlapped and overlapped. And this place got taken over by a few different people through time, but there's still a heredity thing of having El attached to a lot of things because he was a primordial god that had started everything. And El is Saturn, or Chronos. In Greek, he's Chronos and Saturn, and they've equated those two together for forever, if you know Greek lit. And if you know Greek lit too, Sidon, right here. Well, there once was a famous shipbuilder that lived in Sidon, and his name was Poe. And Poe lived in Sidon, and he became famous for his ships. And in fact, them having their ships during a earthquake that caused a big flood in the area saved a whole bunch of them. And so they deified him as Poseidon. And you probably know that name. And they even ran this river right here, and which it says Leontes, but it's really Lyontes, Lyon, like El Elyon, right? Okay, so let's keep looking here. And there's Hadzor, right? And here's Kabul. And neat thing about Kabul is it's actually not Kabul, it's Kabal. And a cabal is a magic gathering, but it's also the magic of Baal. There's a Baal worship site that's run here. Now, down here we have Jezreel Plain, but that's Jezreel Plain, okay? And down here we have Penuel. It's right near Sukkoth, where a bunch of interesting things happens in the Bible. But Penuel, this is the river that gets crossed whenever Jacob wrestles all night with God, and he gets named Israel. Okay? And so he puts up a stone and he calls it Penuel. Well, if you've ever read Enoch, Penuel was the person that taught writing to everybody and was one of the angels that got tossed out of heaven because nobody was supposed to learn how to write ever. There was a time when the Bible was taught that you weren't supposed to have knowledge. Knowledge was bad. We were supposed to have stayed dumb and with the animals. Now this has gotten changed over time, but an original primordial concept in the Bible first was that you were supposed to live off the land and you weren't supposed to have this stuff that man had fabricated. And because, they're nomadic tent people, and they weren't going to unnomadic tent people, right? Okay. And so, curiously, they go from that over time to coveting someone else's land, someone else's house, someone else's possessions, perhaps someone else's women or wives, right? And they end up taking over lands here, which they don't seem to be satisfied if you've read the Bible through and through a few times. And they go apeshit a couple of times through here. And of course, Jacob's troubles, which I'll mention to you real quick. There's seven. He fights 7 cities, and of course, the 7 cities that he tries to attack is supposed to equate to the 7 cities in Rome, and but nobody ever gets that equation. But he ends up having to go across the Jordan and everything, and there's a water trip that goes there. And they found that, Jacob goes through this whole little step, and here in Egypt, da-da, water trip, boom. Well, what does Moses do? Moses does here, Egypt, da-da, boom, water trip, boom, wilderness. What does Jesus do? Jesus does here, Egypt, because of his parents whenever he gets born. Back, boom, water trip, getting baptized in the wilderness for 40 days. Well, it's 40 years here, it's 40 days there, and there's this correlation thing that's just silly. But anyhow, I digress. So let's look at a few of these names here. So there's Jerusalem, and it actually is not spelled that way. If you know it, it's a Yarusalim. And so that has Elohim in it. And Beth always means house of, because these places have houses, and they're not having to live in tents anymore. And before portable tent, you had in cities, you had mud huts, kind of brick things with straw and palm fronds all on top of it. I mean, picture it to look a lot more like resort type stuff, or stuff that's still in deep Africa today. And in fact, the earliest, if you watch my other video on it, earliest Egypt has that effect, and then it turns into Egypt. And even when it turns into Egypt, the people that are staying there are all in these mud hut type things. And all those little rings that are down in Africa are all mud hut rings. Yeah, that are no longer occupied, of course. That land is just gone and turned into unusable. But so let's look at this too. People that know into the Bible and stuff, and here's the wilderness of Zin, and there's a few times whenever does he go into Sinai, or is he in Zin? Because in one place it'll say Sinai, one place it says Zin, and Zin's right down here, and Sinai's way around the corner over there, and down. So kind of, and they've also, they get confused which mountain. Is it Horeb? Is it Sinai? Because there are mistakes all over the Bible, but we're gonna just go for that. So interesting. There's Ashtaroth, and Ashtaroth is actually the female deity in many pantheons through the area. In fact, it's the female goddess that's through the whole area of like Inanna, Ashtera, Astaroth, and Easter, and it's where you get the name Easter from. And her festival is always on the equinox. And so here's Ashtaroth. Now, if you go any lower than this, because that's actually the Akkadian name. If you get any lower than that, it becomes Asherah. Okay? And in a minute, I'll try to show you Yahweh and his Asherah. Yahweh actually was married at one time and had a son too, but his son's name is Baal. And, well, the whole area here, by the way, all these little cubes you're seeing, none of that means anything. Because this whole area that you're seeing here, and in fact much more than this whole area, is owned and operated by what you would know in the Bible as the Canaanites, but they're actually a people that worship El. In fact, all of them through this whole area worship a god named El. Now they try to break it down into Moabites and all these bites, people that are around, and Ammonites and Amorites and all these type of things. Well, no, that's not, the Amorites are at a town that you can't even find anymore, that's down here by the Aurora, Arnon and Aurora. They were over in this area here. There's no, they don't exist anymore, of course, but they never really existed. They are names and primordial names of people like Ammon, right? that have been around that they want to deify and throw into the story of the Bible, and certain people that did certain things and or died in certain areas. So anyhow, so here we have Beth Shemesh, and Shamash means the sun. And this is where the Canaanites were worshiping, or the Moabites are worshiping their sun god, right? Shamash. Well, Moabites are over here. Yeah, that's because that's a bullshit story. Here's where the sun god temple was, and then there's another one all the way over in Sumeria. And what do they call their sun god in Sumeria? It's Shamash. So this goes all the way back from the Sumerians coming through here and putting their place down, Shamash. And then House of Shamash, they kept it, because they used to worship all kinds of gods at one time. A lot. It wasn't no one solo god thing. In fact, Yahweh wasn't until it looks like probably 360 BC. Somewhere around there is whenever they totally drop and come to a unified thing, that they even have pottery. I'll show you here shortly. But anyhow, I want to show you some stuff here. So here's the Philistines, and the Philistines are known to have been Greeks, right? And they even have that Trojan look and stuff like that. Well, the Philistines really owned this whole area. And in fact, they own the other side over here too, where it says Edom. In fact, the Black Hebrew Israelites will know that Edom is where the Whiteys come from or whatever. That's the Esau and all that type of stuff. Well, really, if you want to know the truth, Esau is here and Esau is here because it's them Greek people that get a blushed face. Yeah, that get, well, in fact, all Caucasians can get a blush in their face. You know, regardless of tan, they can get a blush in their face. And the less tan you got, the more it shows. But in fact, that's what Adama means, is that they can blush. It's a blush thing. And that's all that the Esau thing ever meant, too, was a blush. And they believed, and of course, they're making a key off the red thread and bullshit. And it's a bullshit story. The kid comes out holding onto his leg. I mean, come on, people. You know, you're like, oh, it happened. Yeah, and it caused all kinds of problems and stuff. And you need to know, no. So, whenever you find words, here's a key for you real quick. Whenever you find words that like Simeon, on is not in the word. His name is Simi. Okay? Whenever you find names and stuff like, I don't know. Well, here's one real important. Lachish, that's a Sumerian place too. But Ish, this is also a place where Inanna was worshipped and a female god. And Ishi is a female in Hebrew. So you get that. Bethlehem would be Beth Elhim, and it has the Elohim kind of thing into it. In fact, Beth El is right up here, and that means house of God. And Beth is house, and El is God, right? And Beth Horon, well, all these names are all Canaanite names. There's not a Hebrew name going on here. In fact, En Gedi, the En prefix, is another Sumerian one, like Enki and Enlil, right? Like Nin Harsog, En Gedi, right? And so there are names here that are still stuck from people going back and forth all the time. In fact, Ieudea, if that had a U on the front of it, that is Ieudea. And that would be a Sumerian thing. In fact, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's one of the opening words. So, and it gives praise to Ea, which is Ea, and that's the Akkadian form of the Sumerian god Enki we just talked about. So, at one time, too, Gad was supposed to have been cut up in two, and this is Jasher. And by the way, the Romans came down and they killed everybody here, and they only left these bottom tribes alone. But here's the important part I want to tell you about is Judah, because this god El, I'm telling you about, of the whole area, right? El, okay, El is, let me just tell you about El. El's got a council of gods, and they're called the Elohim. And you worship these people in a place called a Temp El, and or the place that you get married at on the side, which really looks like a cattle corral, because in there, I'll show you the bull god here shortly, but you used to put a ring in a woman's nose and carry her around like a cow, and you called her your Asherah and your cow. Yeah, this doesn't go over too good with ladies today, even thinking about it, but I swear this is what it was, and that's where the chapel was. There's also people that ran it, and they were the older people. They're called the elders. So you get these words, and he has a son named Baal. Now, Baal's that storm god. And so if you remember Greek like Chronos and Saturn, Saturn's son, the only one he didn't eat of his own children was Baal. So it was Zeus, and he's a storm god. So if El is Saturn, then Baal is Zeus. And the Canaanite worship of Baal was the origin of the word cannibalism. So there's some weird shit going on here. Whenever they go into times of hardship, things can go wrong. And it doesn't sound like it goes too good. But I want to tell you that what doesn't go too good about it is this is what your Hebrews are worshiping over and over again. And it has to do with a giant statue that they feed their children to and stuff. And it's really not that cool. But anyhow, so these Philistines really cover this whole area. And at one time, there's a place called Eden that's right here. And they call it Edom. But Eden would be right here. And it's all around this area. And there's Eden, spelled a different way, straight across and in Sumeria, the plains of Eden. It's Edin, not Eden. And here it's Edon. But you can get, and what if you just find four rivers here? Anyhow. So I'm going to go off of that real quick. This is all I wanted to show you, and how they've got way up here is where the Phoenicians are supposed to be, right? Okay? And Damascus is just right there, and just up from that. And why does Dan get a little bitty place right there? Dan gets this little bitty, I mean, shit, I'd be pissed if I was Dan. Well, he gets a little place over here, too. What is all this bullshit? Well, it's basically what it is, because these people end up getting all killed off, so they never get their stuff, so it might as well just cut it up like that. You come to find out all these lines are trade routes from actually later. In fact, half of these lines that are connecting here make up trade routes that are from over around 1000 BC to a couple of hundred AD. And that a lot of these lines weren't there at the time that they're telling you that they need to be. And I'll tell you something else as a secret right now. It's amazing how later, whenever they recount the Bible, how they put out these prophecies that end up showing you that the past came true. And it's because they wrote it later about the past. Like, I'm going to write a book that I'm going to say is from the 1700s and tell you about a man named Lincoln that gets shot in the head, right? And his secretary's named Kennedy. Then I'm going to tell you a guy named Kennedy gets shot in a car named Lincoln. And he's going to Ford's Theater, and he's going to go to, yeah, okay. So, and then I'm just going to tell you, and you're going to be like, oh my God, he's Nostradamus. Well, you're not a dumbass, so don't think that. Understand that they didn't write any of this Bible. The earliest Bible is Greek. Okay, so let me show you some more about this area here. So, one neat thing about this Sea of Galilee, which is really called Lake Tiberias, it's not a sea. I mean, people, it's really not a sea at all. But one neat place about this Sea of Galilee that they show up on here, which is drying up now, is they found primordial man living there. Here's bones, okay? But some of them have marks of cannibalism on them, and it just really doesn't look too great. And they found boats, pieces of boats, and they go, this is the boat that Jesus, and no, actually, these may be the boats that at 73 AD got sunk out there whenever they were killing off all the Jews in the boats. But they have an anomaly there underwater, too, that's got a circle depression on it and a line running right through it that's a raised ridge. It's odd, and it's right down up under the water there, and, so right in the middle of the whole lake. And just a strange, here's other pictures of it. So here, let me try to get to what I was telling you about. That's the ancient name of the Sea of Galilee. Oh, there was a picture here. They have, by the way, You can go out there and you can walk out on this dock that's submerged just below the water. You see this. They're out at the Sea of Galilee, right? And there's a dock that's submerged, and it goes out about 70 yards. So you too can walk on water like Jesus Christ. And perhaps the guy that did this, or that, maybe the local joke is you're walking on water. People would walk out and pull up the boats, and they were right there on the water type of thing. I don't know, but this is available for Christ to have walked on. Now, of course, all of his stuff is supposed to be on the very northern tip of it, and this is around the side a little bit, but it's there, and it's in the folklore that they have there. So, so when you look at this, now, what's funny is Judea. All of a sudden, if you'll look at this, so I'm going to give you some stories and some things here. Now they've got Ieudea thrown in here at the bottom. And Philistia is pushed all the way up against here instead of being up here. By the way, there's Joppa. There's no J. There's Jamnia. There's no J. So that's yeah. So anyhow, Samaria, Judea, right? Decapolis. This is now hundreds and hundreds of years ago, Alexander Great came through, and he's owned this place. In fact, the Romans owned this place all the way through the time of the end of the Bible. And pretty much they own the place before the Persians come in, and then after too, right? So there's no real break in that at all for them to not be under somebody else's rule and act like they do in the Bible and then start revolting and stuff. In fact, there's your 400 years right there that they end up under the oppression of somebody else once they finally get their place. But see how they have Sidon right up here and Tyre, and now Phoenicia, instead of starting way up there, comes way down here past this Carmel bump, doesn't it? And it leads into, it comes all the way down here, and it goes to Caesarea, and then it stops. And what's Caesarea? Well, that's Caesar's place. Here's Joppa, Lydia. All these places are changing, right? They're all changing. So the Dead Sea right here, and now there's Masaba down here, which is a different name than what was there before, and Ieudea. Well, that strange name. Let me see what I can get out of that. Well, El, in a time of strife, whenever he was Saturn or Chronos, they always tell you this story is Chronos that did it. He sacrificed his only begotten son, and his name was Ieudea. And it basically is Ieud, and in his honor, they so things got real bad, and everybody had to sacrifice one of their kids, and he decided he would do it too, and they all did it to stay alive in an extreme drought. It sounds disgusting nowadays, doesn't it? Okay, so and this is all in Berosus and St. Cunathon and stuff. They tell you about this right straight up. In fact, here's a snap for you. The ancient Phoenician word for the planet Saturn, because they knew it as a wandering star, was Israel. Yeah, it was the warrior star of El. And it doesn't mean wrestles with God. It means warrior of El. Saturn, Chronos, the cannibal god. The cannibal god of oppression and time and space. It kind of seems like we're forced under that kind of idea now, doesn't it? Well, anyhow, his son, Ieudea, they named the land after him. All the way from what is Phoenicia, which is their land, because Chronos is a Phoenician. By the way, Thoth is a Phoenician, and where Thoth taught at was Penuel. In this area, Thoth is known to go around and teach everywhere. In fact, he goes down and makes writing in Egypt. So, anyhow, Thoth's a god of knowledge. In fact, he's also Hermes Trismegistus, or Mercury, as you know him by. So, where is Samaria and Judea and Idumea? Well, actually, this whole area right here was called Ieudea. Ieudea. And since there is no J for there to be a Judea, what do you think this area was called before there was a J? Would it not be the same as Jesus, as Jesus, and Ieudea? There is no Judea. In fact, there are no Jews, because it always was Els. Ieudea and Ieudea is just a remnant showing you that we're going to throw that name in there, but we're going to scooch this ass in here. And Samaria was tucked in right here. And Perea was about here and down in a small area and ran off into Philadelphia. And by the way, Philadelphia is Greek. Yep. And here's where the Nabateans are and stuff. But these are also the Greeks. Yep, these are Caucasian people that are all around here. So there is no Judea. And therefore, there never really was Jews. This is something that's made up. It's literally made up. And I'll tell you where a key point comes. Whenever they get destroyed and the temple taken over, and they get taken into Babylon captivity, whenever they get back out, somehow this priest finds these scrolls hidden in a temple, and he gives them to them, and they go, wow, this is lost books. And it gets given to him, and the story goes that a Greek person comes up and hands him more, and it looks like it's this correlative moment, and gives him a large sum of money and asks him to transcribe them. He doesn't know what they say. Maybe he does. Well, what are they written in? They're written in ancient Phoenician, which, if you go back in the alphabet, is the exact same as ancient Greek, or ancient Hebrew. Ancient Hebrew, it's, if you go back far enough, they're the same thing. And then they start deviating off each other. So it shows you where they stole the language from. And then I was going to show you Yahweh and his Asherah, right? Let me show you that. Do I have it already pulled up here? I thought I did. No. Okay, so let me do this. Yeah, let me show you his wife. And I'll show you that why it's really not good that this actually is even here anymore, because you can take away the idol, but if it's the same religion, then that's a change. Now, clearly, nobody has been sacrificing goats for the longest time. So here's how it breaks down. They found this piece here, and it had inscriptions on it. And whenever it did, and you can't even really see it, but it's right there, that says Yahweh. Right? And it's got this bowl kind of thing, and the inscription, so they keep digging around, and what they end up finding is a scrap of paper that also says some stuff on it in ancient Phoenician. And then they find, where's a good one at? We'll just grab this one. And then they find this. And this says Yahweh, or Jehovah, of Samaria and Asherah. And there's Asherah, and there's Baal, and there's Yahweh, and there's a fly or a hornet, and another fly. Lord of the flies. Baal, Zebub, Baal, Zebub, Baal, Asherah, El Elyon, El Olam, El Shaddai. No, Shaddai is female. El Shaddai. Shad is titties in Hebrew, or breasts, or two mountains, if you will. And so Shaddai is female. So it's funny, but God Almighty is the female one of the three. Yet screws them all up later. And so they end up looking like a fool. Kind of like in the Baal Peor, Baal worship, and they do yell all day and everything, they get made a fool out of. And so he ditches his wife and his kids. Sounds great, doesn't he? And ends up with not having a Baal worship thing. But look at this. He's got a fleur-de-lis right here on his head, and that is a fleur-de-lis back here on the ground too. They have fleur-de-lis all over the place, which is a French thing. Okay? Now they also look like they have spotted jaguar pelts on or something, or they're speckled. So they're not that perfect, unspeckled, unblemished cow, are they, at this point? No, they sure aren't. But, so biblical lies about ancient Egypt. Well, this guy's got it in here. Here's Yahweh, and here's, let's see, Yahweh and his Asherah. They're at Kinjlet Adrid, however you pronounce that shit. There's these things, too, that show handprints, and you put your hand in them. And there's a place for a puddle of something, like, I don't know if it's blood or ink or something you're supposed to do, but the inscription scratched into here is Yahweh and his Asherah and their blessings. So, you know what's terrible about this, though? If you look at this artwork, you've seen some badass artwork from this same time right here. This is supposedly only about 400 to 600 BC, I think, if they've measured most of it at. Part of the place can go back to like 1100. But look at this. This looks like my 4-year-old trying to draw here. Now, we have Egyptian shit that looks great. We have Sumerian stuff that looks pretty kick-ass with all the guys with the pine cones and all that badass stuff. And this is what your nomadic, illiterate, tent people can pull off. Now, I'm going to ask you a weird question here. You think the people that can only draw like this and do this shit, you think these people have any idea how to write the prose of a Bible? Do you find that all comes from the Levitical priests? Did you ever know that the Levites are actually supposed to be the Hyksos? Have you ever looked up and found out that Hike is way up above North Afghanistan and above Arata? And they have a god named Hike there that killed Nimrod, and he was deified as so by putting Orion in the sky. And Orion is Arion, and that goes all the way around in a band on top of those Caucasus mountains there, running down through Arata and into Samaria again as a loop around this whole place. And the Sumerians are the Aryans again. And so you get a loop in a circle around through here. And it all works off of that. But yeah, Yahweh and his Asherah. And I tell you, there are so many people that are Bible freakouts right now, and they have no idea that this was stolen from Yahweh and Baal. And it's a bull god. And what did they used to do with this bull god? Just to show you. I mean, I want you to look up Baal worship, but... So, this is what your Hebrews used to do. So what's amazing is if you found out anybody ever did this type of shit, I don't know if you'd ever trust them. Imagine what they did was they would take, in hopes of rain, and they would take and throw their sons and daughters into this giant brass furnace thing here to burn them up. It had a hole in its mouth and a tube, and if they threw water in there, it would go roar and sound like it bellowed. And they've made some huge one of these things. You see how his arms are kind of hinged? They have these chains on them, which aren't showing up here, and the priest had the chains, and they throw the baby on the hands, and it starts searing because it's hot, and they flick it into there. They have other ones where they have a giant mouth, and it's open, and it flicks into there. So, and I think the big one there was around at Carthage. But you can see her with this cute little baby. She's like, oh, you're so cute, you're next, right? So this is what they were doing. And so I ask you a question. Would you ever trust people that did this and thought it was God and kept straying to it? Okay, so you find out that this is what El looked like. If you found out, here's your priest, blue and white, right? So here they're worshiping El, and they have to sacrifice their firstborn. You do know that you're supposed to, if you're worshiping anything in that Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, you're supposed to sacrifice your firstborn kids. It says it right there in Sinai. Just after the 10 Commandments. Keep going after that and you'll find it. And it's laws of a whole bunch of stuff. People get lost in that or they just leave it alone. But no, read through there and it'll tell you. And then it tells you to do an ox. And then it retells you again to make sure you do your kid just like you do the ox. So they want your firstborn kids. In a time of strife, they're going to draw lots and they're going to kill people. It's just going to, and that's what these people did. And so they ended up taking away the idol. But if this used to be the idol of El and the Elohim in the Temp El, and the angels' names are Gabriel, Nathanael, Raphael, Ariel, Azazel, Michael, but Michael. Yeah. It's like a big elephant right there in your face, isn't it? And if they would have, now understand this effect. If it was the bad thing, Baal and El, that's bad. Oh, we got to kill those Canaanites. If it was, why would they keep the name of the Elohim and keep everybody's name El, like Ezekiel? I've got one for you, Elijah. It means El is Yah, or Yahweh. How about Bealiah? That means Baal is Yah, or Baal is Yahweh. So, that's not going to work too good, is it? No, that's not a good idea. You find that Judeo-Christianity is built on something like this, where they used to play their horns real loud, while they throw their kids into this fire and burn them. They're putting fires in the back of this. And if you'll look, it's hard to see in this picture, but these two little kids are looking at what's going on. And since they're singled out over here and not with the big group, I'm guessing they're next. Yeah. Let's see if I can get that a little better. They're putting a fire pit in there. By the way, this is Moloch, so there's really no difference. It's either Moloch or that's Yahweh himself right there. Yep, because Baal looks a little different than that. That's so. Here we go with the Jews, and you can look in Berosus and all these guys, and they'll tell you ancient things that they used to do, and passing kids through the fire and all these things that they did. And here's kind of a Moloch version, but they have it as an owl. Well, who is the owl? The owl is actually Asherah or Inanna's thing. She was the owl of wisdom. In fact, in the Bible, whenever it goes into that point where it talks about the wolf shall lay with the lamb, the next phrase when it says wild goat, if you'll look that up in Hebrew, that says satyr. And then whenever it says the owl shall land on the tree limb, the word is Lilith. Yeah, check all this stuff out, man. And, this isn't just but the half beginning of it, but, yeah, they didn't even have, there's no land, there's no Judea, there's Baal worship and El, and this is what they kept the names of. Why would they keep the name of something they disgusted? Kind of makes you think, huh? Sub me. Like if you like it. If you don't, I'm sorry. This is reality. Reality. Oh, one more thing before you click off. See if I can show you. Yeah, this is a terrible version of this picture, and I was going to do a whole one on this and start going into another thing, but they're like, look, here's black people. Here's black slaves, even back at that time. Apparently came out of Nubia or something. But you say, oh, Lord, black slavery. Hold on. Look at the white people in slavery right here. You see them? This guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Okay, and then look at these women with a net on top of them. Now, it looks like these women are like weeping for Tammuz or whatever. Well, they may be, but it looks like they just threw a net over them and they're just going to leave them there, and they tell them to lay on the ground. This guy sits there and goes, lay on the ground or I'll knock the shit out of you. And they got elephants and stuff, and they're all taken off. Yeah, so this is a worship of Baal Haman. That's Baal worship that's going on there. And in the Phoenician city of Carthage. And it had a huge Baal statue in Carthage. So, all right, peace out. Y'all have a good one. Take care.